Hello gentlemen. This video I'm going to be editing a simple, what will end up being like a 2 or 3 minute YouTube video, and I'll try to explain everything I do. I will probably not explain the very basics, so you can call this an intermediate Premiere Pro tutorial. I already have my screen recorded. This video is going to be a simple video about how to install the Netflix app on Mac. The goal is to make a simple tutorial that's easy to follow and understand for someone who doesn't know a lot about tech. And at the end, I'll also show you some cool presets that you can yoink for yourself and make your videos extra fancy. So back to the video. So the first thing I'll do is open up Premiere and create a new project. I save all of my projects into one folder, which is this MISC folder. And I usually edit 5 videos within one Premiere project. Or if it ends up being super cluttered, I do fewer than 5. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to start a new project. So the last video I made was 498. So I'll name this project vids 499 to 400xx because I don't really know how many will be in this Premiere project, and I'll save it into my MISC folder. And this is the layout that I like to have for my Premiere Pro. I have the timeline on the very bottom across the whole laptop. Right now I'm recording on my MacBook Pro, so it doesn't have a super huge screen. I would definitely recommend getting a monitor if you're editing videos for long hours, but it can definitely be done with just a laptop, although it's not super comfortable. So I'm going to import my footage. This is the first thing that I'll do. Then I'm going to create a new bin and call it unfinished 499, which is the number of the video. And then the title of the video, Netflix app. Then I'll create a new bin within that folder. I call all of my screen recordings B-roll because, well, I don't have talking head footage for my videos. Next up, I'll import my Z music folder, which is just my music folder, which has all of my sound effects that I use, the music that I use, and also my video effects. I'll drag the screen recording to the timeline to create a new sequence, and I'll immediately go into sequence and sequence settings to change the resolution, because this resolution is not really perfect for YouTube. I'm going to go with 1440p, which is 2560 by 1440, and okay. You'll notice that the recording is a little punched in, so I'm going to size it down and hold Command on my keyboard so that it snaps into place. Or maybe it doesn't snap into place. I'm clicking the tilde key to maximize a panel of Premiere Pro. You can just hover your mouse over a panel that you want to maximize and click the tilde key, the squiggly thing on your keyboard. This looks good. And the first thing I always do is fix my audio. So I'm going to cut this video based on the audio waveform. Now, before I do anything with the audio, I like to have it set up so that I have the final version, for which I'm going to use my voiceover preset. By the way, I'm going to be using a lot of keyboard shortcuts in this video, and I'll try to explain what they are once I've used them. So right now you saw me use Shift-C, which takes me to my effects panel. Now the shortcut to take you to keyboard shortcuts, I believe, is Command-Option-K. Yes. So if I highlight the Shift key, you'll see that Shift-C takes me to my effects panel, and you can copy these shortcuts if you want. Shift-X takes me to effect controls, and Shift-Z to projects. Since I'm editing on a very small screen, I don't have the luxury of having these panels separated while also not having to resize each one to access another one. And that's why I have all of them stacked in one place, and I just switch to them with keyboard shortcuts. There was a quick interruption because I realized that my preset for voiceover only worked on stereo tracks, and this is a mono track. By the way, you can tell that this is a mono track because it's not split in 2. So I had to update my preset to work with mono and stereo, and also had to update my presets pack so that it fixes this problem. So anyway, I'm going to apply the mono preset to this audio, and actually I'll show you how it sounds like before the preset. In order to download the Netflix app on your Mac, open up your Spotlight search by hitting. And this is what it sounds like with the preset applied. In order to download the Netflix app on your Mac, open up your Spotlight search by hitting Command Space and type. So a lot better. And once the audio is nice and fixed, I'm going to move this a little bit up and expand it even more. I'm going to cut up the video based on the audio waveform. So I know this is the started video because I just heard it. So I'm going to hit Q to ripple trim everything. Let me explain what just happened. So I'll move my playhead here. And what happens when I press Q on the keyboard, it looks at where my playhead is and cuts out everything before the playhead and then moves everything after the playhead in its place. place. So you'll see that this part in the sequence will now be in the beginning if I press Q.
In order to download the...
Now there's a space. I don't leave any spaces. So I'm going to navigate here with my arrow keys and hit Q again so that it starts off here.
In order to download the Netflix app on your Mac,
I'm zooming in by holding Option and scrolling on my magic mouse, either left or right. It has this smooth scrolling feature, which I'm pretty happy about.
Open up your Spotlight search by hitting Command Space and type.
Now I suspect this is not where the video actually starts because I probably messed up here. Okay, never mind. So I noticed that when I was fixing my audio presets, I think I've undone some actions a few times and this resized back. So I'm just sizing it to the correct thing again.
Space and type in Safari.
This is a breath. I always cut out breaths. So the way I cut it out was I inserted a cut here. Normally you would do that with the cut tool by pressing C on your keyboard, but I have a keyboard shortcut for that. And for me, it's S. The keyboard shortcut is called Add Edit, which basically just splits the clip. So I pressed S and then I came here and I pressed Q, which removed this breath here and moved everything after the playhead into its place.
Then go into netflix.com.
Now here I was typing on the keyboard and the keyboard wasn't super loud. I was recording with my built-in MacBook's microphone, which can usually mean that the keyboard clicks are super loud, even louder than my voice. So I don't want that to happen, but since it's okay here, I'm just going to leave this here. I think I've repeated what I said here, with no keyboard clicks. Let's see.
Then go into netflix.com.
And here.
Then go into netflix.com.
It still sounds better, so I'm just going to use this audio and this video. Right now, the clips are linked, but I can hold Option and click on one of the clips, which will select only that clip, no matter if it's linked or not. So I'm going to drag it by holding Option, which will duplicate it. Then I'll hold Option again and select on this ending part and hit F on my keyboard, which for me is delete. So F deletes. Instead of delete key, that's all the way over here on the right side. I've set it here, which is where my hand naturally rests on the keyboard so that I don't have to move my left hand all the way over here to the delete key or release my hand from the mouse and then press the delete key. It just saves a lot of time if you have all of your keyboard shortcuts here on the left instead of scattered all across the keyboard. Now, I usually don't leave any gaps in between my audio, so this right here is a little too long, and I'm looking at where I'm going to start typing Netflix. So over here, I'm going to add a cut, hit F to delete, and then move this to the left, and I type out netflix.com and click Enter, which can be used as an L cut as a transition to the next sentence.
Then go into netflix.com.
I've used this already. What I've done here is clicked A to switch to this tool, which is the track select forward, which lets me select everything on the timeline, no matter if there are any cuts or not. So with this tool, you can select everything and then move it wherever you want. I'm also using the backslash to zoom out to the full sequence. And the backslash for me is actually my caps lock key. I have this utility called Carabiner Elements, which basically lets me map my caps lock key to the backslash key, which zooms out to sequence. Okay, so I'm using the backslash to zoom out to fit everything, and then backslash again to come back to the zoom level that I had before.
Then go into netflix.com, come up to File and
so I'm going to make this a little shorter with Option as well. If I drag normally, these clips are linked, so it will also drag the audio. So what I do is hold Option and then drag the top one so that it doesn't cut up the audio. Then I click A again to move everything and then hold Option again on this one and join it. And it looks like this.
Then go into netflix.com, come up to File and choose Add.
I think I want to show a little bit of my mouse coming from here to File, but I'll fix that later when I'm going to do the second pass.
To File and choose Add to Dock.
Cut here because this is a breath.
Here you'll be able to name your web app. So I'll just leave Netflix.
I heard some mouth clicks here, so I'm going to try to remove them as well.
Here you'll be able to name your web app. So I'll just...
I'm going to zoom in so I can see the audio waveform better. Maybe even maximize this. I think this is where it happened. Here I'm checking my sequence settings to make sure it's at 60 FPS, and it's not, so I'm going to set it here. Just something that I remembered. I think it's maybe here, that click, that mouth click.
Name your web app. So I'll just leave...
What about this?
Just leave Netflix.
Nope.
your web app. So I'll just leave.
I think the mouth sound that I want to remove is inside this so I'm just going to leave it here because I don't want to cut out the whole word. This is a thing that annoys me about myself, is that I don't look ahead and what else is on the sequence. So I edited this clip and tried to remove the S sound, even though I repeated that sentence over here without the mouth sound that I was trying to remove. So essentially, I just did a bunch of work for no reason.
Netflix and click add.
I missed the add here.
Netflix and click add.
The visuals do not really match up, so I'm going to make this shorter and this longer, so it's a nice continuous mouse movement.
And click add.
And here I missed the add, so I'm going to hold Option, so I select only the top one, S to split. I'm going to find a place where I actually click on the add button, like this. I'm going to split again, and hopefully it looks good.
Netflix and click add.
And it does. There's some more mouth sounds here, so I'm going to remove those.
And click add. Add. Netflix will now be added to your dock. It's important.
Okay, I'm cutting out this audio waveform here because I know this is probably nothing important, because I often restart my audio if I screw up the beginning of the sentence or I forget what I wanted to say. So let's see if it's actually useless.
Well, obviously.
See, I screwed up twice there, so I'm just going to cut this out. If you're editing for someone else, you're never going to know when they screw up and how their audio waveform looks like. But if you're editing videos for yourself, after you make a few videos, you're going to have a pretty good sense of what you should cut out and what you should leave in.
Will now be added to your dock. Obviously, an actual Netflix app doesn't exist.
There's another mouth sound that I can hear here. It's in the middle of a word, so I don't want to cut it out. Now, one annoying thing about Premiere and audio, you'll see that it lags behind. My playhead is over here and it's playing somewhere over here. And that's because I've applied the presets, the clean audio preset, which basically means that Premiere has to render them in the background as I'm previewing the audio live. So that's why it lags behind. This is super annoying because sometimes it means that I can't really find the end of a sentence
from just your browser, but it acts just like a separate app.
See, this is a perfect example. When I said app, the playhead was over here, even though the word app ends over here. So I have to scrub back and then make a cut here instead of here, because this is just a breath.
Just your browser, but it acts just like a separate app. If I close Safari.
So I like the way that there was some movement on the screen as I was saying this sentence, but I don't like this version of the sentence, so I'm going to use this one instead.
Just your browser, but it acts just like a separate app. If I close Safari.
So essentially, this is my first pass. I fix up the audio and then make sure that the screen recording matches what I'm saying on the screen. I'm probably going to fast forward this part because it's pretty boring to watch. Also, if you want to increase the playback speed, you can hit L not once, but twice, and it will double the playback speed. The same with going backwards. You can hit the letter J, and it will go backwards at 1x speed. And if you hit it twice, it will go faster and more fast and fast AF. So you can use J and L keys to go back and forward, and the letter K to stop. Before the word this, I sometimes make this long sound and I can just cut it out and it sounds perfectly the same. So there's no reason to leave it in.
Icons.com. This is a website that has a bunch of cool app icons.
Now here I noticed that I slightly moved away from the microphone.
Website as an app on your Mac. These apps act just like your...
See, the audio is a little muffled, so I'm going to try to fix that with parametric equalizer. Maybe I'll try to just bring this H point here to increase the highs of the audio and see how that sounds like.
At website as an app on your Mac. These apps act just like your normal app, so you can just go into your...
Or maybe just increase the volume slightly.
At website as an app on your Mac. These apps act just like your normal app, so you can just...
Yes, I think that works. So the final video ended up being 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and the original one was 9 minutes. So I make a lot of mistakes while recording. And now it's time for fancy stuff that no one really cares about since this is a tutorial, and it would probably work if I just left it like this, but I want to add some zoom ins or a cool background. So I'm going to select everything, hold Option and the up arrow to move it one track, and I'm going to search for MKBHD dots. It looks really nice. I love how this looks. It's also a part of my presets pack. Essentially, these are just a bunch of of dots that I added a turbulent displace effect on. And I don't really remember how I made these stars, but the only thing I remember was that this was super laggy and took like 3 hours to export. So now we have the background. I'm going to make this half the resolution because it's kind of laggy. I'm going to lock the first track because I don't want to touch the background, and I'm going to only animate and do stuff on the V2 track. So here we don't really need to see the bottom of my desktop. So I'm going to move this anchor point to the top. That way it resizes from the top. I'm going to hold Option and resize until it hits the edges. And then I'm going to hold Control again and snap it to the top of the screen. There needs to be something here because this is just a stationary shot and it does nothing.
In order to download the Netflix app on your Mac, open up your Spotlight search by hitting Command Space and type.
I'm marking my footage to rows because this means that I need to add something on top of it. And here I'm probably going to add a keyboard which shows the shortcut Command Space. Also here in the audio, I'm temporarily going to disable all of these effects so that it doesn't lag and I can actually see when I start talking rather than having a delayed timeline.
Download the Netflix app on your Mac, open up your Spotlight search by hitting Command Space and Command Space.
So right here. And so this red clip means that there needs to be something above it.
Command Space and type in Safari, then go into.
So Safari opened, nobody needs to see this part. So I'm going to move the anchor point on top again. If I can click on it, I'm holding Command to snap it over there, and I'm going to resize the bottom so that it zooms in into the address bar. I'm actually going to zoom in a lot more here. Like this. Then I'm pressing N on my keyboard to nest it. And the reason for that is because I want to apply a camera shake preset. And the preset for that is Benny Productions. You'll notice that a lot of the presets that I have different YouTuber names. And that's because I made them based on the presets that they use. So it's just easier for me to remember. For example, Benny Productions movement is based on the movement effect that he had on his video, or the Johnny Harris photo preset because I first saw it in a Johnny Harris video.
Then go into netflix.com. Come on.
And the reason I nest this clip is because if I didn't nest it, it would move a lot because it would add movement to this whole clip, which is zoomed in, which means that if I zoom in even more, the movement would be super massive. But if I nest the clip, it only makes it this big. So everything else is cut off and the size of this clip becomes 100. So that's why I'm applying the movement to a nested clip. Once I'm inside Netflix, again, I don't need to see the background, but now since I've already resized the first clip, I'm going to select it, Command C, Command Option V, and paste the motion.
Come up to File and choose Add to Dock. Here you'll be able.
Same. I don't really need to see the bottom again.
To name your web app, so I'll just leave.
Again.
Netflix and click Add.
Here I can zoom in and actually show the dock, like so.
And click Add. Netflix will now be.
Let's make this a J-cut. So if the audio comes before the video, this is called a J-cut. And it usually makes sense to do this because in real life, you probably hear something before you turn your head and see something. So it feels very natural. The opposite of this, like so, would be an L-cut. So the video would come before the audio.
And click Add. Netflix will now be added to your dock. Obviously, an actual Netflix app. Add. Netflix will now be added to your dock. Obviously, an app.
I feel like there needs to be a zoom in here. So I'm adding a few keyframes, moving forward. This panel is a little too small, so it bugs out with the keyframes and the size. I'm adding 2 more keyframes and I'm going to zoom into the place or maybe to my mouse cursor. I'm not sure.
Obviously, an actual net.
Let me center it in.
Obviously, an actual Netflix app doesn't exist for macOS, so the best thing that you can do is create a web app, which essentially just. is create a web app, which essentially just acts like a normal app that you would get if you were to go into Netflix from just your browser. But it acts just like a separate
What about this?
normal app that you would get if you were to go.
I want to show the actual resizing, if it's possible. So I'm going to duplicate that clip and try to find where I resize it. So the cursor was here, I move it a little bit, and then I go there to resize it.
Acts like a normal app that you would get if you were to go into Netflix from just your browser. Which essentially just acts like a normal app that you would get. Which essentially just acts like a normal. What you can do is create a web app, which is the best thing that you can do is.
I'll show something else here. I probably want to remove the attributes, and I'll actually paste attributes from this clip and show me opening the app. Perfect.
macOS. So the best thing that you can do is create a web app, which essentially just acts like a normal app that you would.
Again, we don't really need to see the background here.
Actually just acts like a normal app that you would get if you were to go into Netflix.
Right, so here the cursor is just stable for some reason, so we don't need it to be like that.
Which essentially just acts like a normal app that you would get if you were to go into Netflix from just your.
Okay, I'm going to just cut on the action, so as soon as I start resizing it, because it's obvious anyway that it's a cut, so I don't have to hide it.
Is create a web app, which essentially just acts like a normal app that you would get if you were to go into Netflix from just your browser. Get if you were to go into Netflix from just your browser, but it acts just like a separate app. If I close Safari, you'll see that Netflix.
Again, the background doesn't even need to be shown here. Maybe I won't even show the background this whole video. I just added it there because force of habit.
If I close Safari, you'll see that Netflix is still open and it acts just like any other app. But there is one problem, and that's the icon.
I'm not sure if I like this section, so I'm just going to rewatch the whole thing again and see if there's anything I want to change or not.
Your Spotlight search by hitting Command Space and type in Safari, then go into netflix.com. Come up to.
Here, that was a little too fast, so I'm going to shorten the Netflix clip and make another L cut or J cut.
And space and type in Safari, then go into netflix.com.
I want to actually show Safari opening up. I'm going to add a cut there, and there it is.
And type in Safari, then go into.
And like so.
And type in Safari, then go into netflix.com. Come up to File and choose Add.
Okay, I want to show the whole me typing in netflix.com. So I'm going to add a cut here, and then I'm going to shorten this one so that it feels like I typed it actually faster, but I want for someone to be able to see the whole word there.
Safari, then go into netflix.com. Come up to.
Maybe even like this.
Then go into netflix.com. Come up to File and choose Add to Dock. Here you'll be able to name your web.
There's a little bit of space here that I didn't need.
Add to Dock. Here you'll be able to name your web app.
Right here.
Choose Add to Dock. Here you'll be able to name your.
Nope.
To Dock. Here you'll be able to name your web app. So I'll just leave Netflix. You'll be able to name your web app. So I'll just leave Netflix and click Add. Netflix will now be added to Netflix and click Add. So I'll just leave Netflix and click Add. Netflix will now.
Now I'm just tidying up some mistakes in the audio that I left during the first pass. So I'm going to zoom in on the Netflix logo again here. Maybe a lot of zooming in, like so.
But there is one problem, and that's the
I want to make this zoom in really smooth, so I'm going to make these keyframes not linear.
But there is one problem, and that's the icon. It looks horrible. To change that, you can right-click, go to Options, and choose Show in Finder. This will take you to a place where this app is located on your Mac. Then right-click on it and choose Get Info, or click Command-I on your keyboard. This will open up the Info menu, which shows the information of this app. Next, you'll want to open Safari again and go into macOS icon.
There's some search history here that I probably didn't want to put in the video. Oh, it's not a problem, but just double checking in case there's something not good there.
App icons for your favorite apps. I'm going to go
There's a nasty jump cut here, so I'm going to zoom in on all icons.
apps. I'm going to go to all icons and type in Netflix.
And then when I'm typing in Netflix, I also want to zoom in.
Icons and type in Netflix. And
I'm not actually typing in the full word, so I need to cut out this, cut out the middle. That's perfect.
icons and type in Netflix. And here you can pick any icon that you want. I'll just choose this one. Next, find the icon that you downloaded and simply drag it onto this old icon and it will replace it.
Okay, here I want to also not show the background.
That you downloaded and simply drag it onto this old icon and it will replace it.
I'm adding a marker here because this is the first clip that I want to start nesting. So I want to nest all of those clips.
My dock, the icon.
I'm going to remove attributes, then paste attributes from one of the clips that have not been resized by me. Then I'm going to select them with Option and nest them. This is a complicated maneuver that I think I could have avoided. But right now I'm a little lazy to think of another way of doing this, so I'm not going to do this. If you hold Control and click up or down inside of any number, it will move its decimal point. And if you hold Shift, it will move by a lot, like 10 or something. Perfect. I think the size should not change here. Yes. The reason I did this is because I want to slowly move the screen down, like so.
I close this info menu and look at my dock.
And this needs to be non-linear.
Look at my dock. The icon is still not updated. It will update if I restart my Mac, but since I don't want to do that, I can open up the terminal and type in.
Let's go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's zoom in into the center. Of course, make these Bezier. I've just realized that I didn't explain how I do it with keyboard shortcuts. So I have a keyboard shortcut set to my comma key to set keyframe temporal interpolation to ease out and my period key to keyframe temporal interpolation ease in, which basically means that if I highlight the first keyframes and press the comma key, which is on the left of the keyboard, and that's why it's meant for the left keyframes so that my brain doesn't forget it, it will set the temporal interpolation of these keyframes to ease out, I think, and it will set these ones to ease in. So it basically makes for a smoother animation. This is how the animation looks before.
Terminal and type.
And this is how it looks after.
Terminal and type in.
So a little more smooth.
Kill all space dock. Space dock.
Okay, I don't like how I stopped typing there. So I'm going to cut this. And then look when I start typing again. There's the letter O. I typed O and then I stopped again. That's perfect.
All space dock, enter, and it will restart. Enter, and it will restart my dock, which will now update all the icons, including the net. All the icons, including the.
And I'm going to zoom in to the Netflix logo once again. maybe a little less. Again, set these to Bezier instead of linear keyframes.
Netflix icon. By the way,
Never mind, the zoom in doesn't work here at all. I'm going to hit this clock to remove all the keyframes. I think I have an image that I can use for this ending, for the psych part.
Psych.
And hopefully I named it psych. Yes, I did. I'm just going to move a duplicate of it onto my desktop, then import it into Premiere. Perfect. It's a shame that the audio doesn't really match up with the video, with the timeline. I can't feel the memes immediately. Then I'm going to go into my templates folder, which essentially is just a separate project that I have a bunch of templates that I often use. So for this one, I want to use this text, which slowly turns from red to white. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it into my sequence. It's probably going to be a little bigger. Then I'm going to type psych on this one, lock it, so that I can select the bottom one and also type psych in there. Make this cross dissolve a little shorter. So this top one is just white and the bottom one is red. So it basically starts off with full red visible and then it slowly fades into the white text. And that's where I get this effect where it fades from red to white. So I'm going to cut it here, then nest it so I can move both of them together. And then I'm going to move it up top here. Also, a thing that I just did there was click Command T. It's a keyboard shortcut that you're probably familiar if you use Photoshop. It lets you free transform something, so I've said the same thing in Premiere. It's called Activate Direct Manipulation in Program Monitor. So you can set it to Command T or Control T if you're on Windows, and it's basically the same in Photoshop. So essentially, I don't have to click on this clip, then hit Shift X, which would bring me to my Effect Controls panel, and then click on Motion to start freely moving this. I can just select the clip, hit Control T, and it immediately selects motion so that I can move this wherever I want on the program monitor. Okay. So this was the second pass. I essentially just added a bunch of zoom-ins and some things that I wanted on top, but I'm going to do the third pass and add the rest of the fancy things that I wanted to add. So right now, the first thing that I'm thinking about is the RGB overlay that I've also made, and that's also inside of my presets pack. It's called RGB. It's essentially just an overlay of a bunch of RGB colors. So I set the size of this to 100 and then I set the blending mode to either multiply and it makes it a little darker, or overlay, which works on dark things. Overlay doesn't really work well with white things, or I mean a white background, but on a black background it works great. And then I set the opacity to around 10, so it's barely visible. And I'm going to use it everywhere where it's zoomed in. For example, inside of this nested sequence, because it's super zoomed in. And as you can see, it adds this subtle screen effect, which I kind of like how it looks. I'm now experimenting with the opacity and the blend mode. 30% is a little too much. I think 17 looks good. So I'm going to copy it and add it everywhere where there's a zoom in. It would probably make sense to have all of this in a nested sequence and then zoom in on the RGB overlay as well as these clips, but it's barely noticeable, so I'm just going to leave it on top because it would be a lot of trouble to undo all of the zoom-ins over here and add them to a nested sequence. So I'm just scrubbing along, seeing if I have anything super zoomed in. So here, as it's zooming in, I want the RGB to slowly fade in as well, so I'm going to add a cross dissolve.
Terminal and type.
You can see that as it's zooming in, the RGB colors of the screen naturally come into visibility, and I want them to fade in fully before it zooms into the maximum. So this makes sense because as you zoom in closer to a screen, you'll be able to see the pixels, and that's why I faded in. It's a subtle detail that probably nobody will ever notice.
Terminal and type in kill all space dock, enter, and it will restart my dock, which will now update all the accounts, including Netflix. By the way, it's not only Netflix, you can Facebook, YouTube, Gmail, file, app to dock, these apps have to normal, so you just go to your applications folder or options and you install from Mac, just drag it into the trash, and then once you empty the trash, this app will be gone. As you can see, it's one file.
Again, there's a zoom in here as well, so I'm going to just duplicate this. You can do that by holding Option and dragging. And so as it's zooming in, I want the RGB monitor overlay to appear.
Will be gone. As you can see, it disappeared. Oh, and there's
And that's it for the overlays. All right, so the next order of business is probably adding a keyboard over this red clip, since I've only marked one clip red, so I'm going to take care of it now so it doesn't hurt my head the whole time. I think I have a PNG of the keyboard downloaded, but I'm not sure. Keyboard, PNG transferred keyboard, there it is, reveal in Finder. And I'm again dragging it to my desktop, holding Option to duplicate, and then importing it into the sequence like so. And it is a black keyboard. Unfortunately, it has these outlines, which I don't really like. So I'm just going to delete it and then offline it. I usually just offline a clip from Premiere and I don't delete it within Premiere because it's just so annoying to find it since I drag everything in from my desktop and only organize everything in the project panel later. So I don't even know where it is now. So I'm just going to go into Google and look for a transparent keyboard. This is a Windows keyboard and I'm making a tutorial for Mac. So I probably want something else like an Apple keyboard. Pretty good, although the resolution isn't as big. I'm still going to save it. Oh, it was a trickster. Let's do Apple keyboard. Surely there's some images. There it is. That's the one. It was that easy. It's a JPEG, so let's import it into Photoshop. Select subject to select it and mask it out and export it. I'm cutting out some leftover white parts and let's see if everything is okay by adding a black color underneath this layer. Just checking if everything is cut out nicely. It's not super nice, so I'm just going to double click on the mask and then it should open up the mask settings. I'm going to increase the smoothness, the feather just a little bit, and then the contrast a lot. And now the edges are nice and smooth. Let's export this as PNG. I'll probably keep this for later so that I don't have to do this every single time that I need a keyboard in a video. Delete the old one and import the new one. Now I want this keyboard to appear nicely on the screen, so I'm probably going to use a preset. First, I nest the clip so that the scale becomes 100 and that it doesn't screw up with the preset. And I'm going to add a Johnny Harris photo preset, which makes the image just appear from the bottom with a blur like this. It starts out blurry and then it just comes in. I think the blur amount is a little too much, so I'm just going to change it up from 20 to something like 8.
Slide search by hitting Command.
And when I say Command space, I'm actually going to go into my templates folder and pick this blue rectangle, which you'll see what it does in a moment. I'm locking all the layers so that it doesn't paste over them, and then I'm unlocking them again. I haven't found a fast way to do this, so I have to do it manually every single time, which is quite annoying. And this is essentially just a highlight. So I'm going to make this highlight into a nice command-shaped rectangle. I'm going to zoom in with my trackpad. Can be finicky sometimes. Perfect. Now the whole command key is nicely covered.
Hitting Command space.
And then I want the same thing for the spacebar. So I'm just going to duplicate this one. I want the animation to fully be completed so that it doesn't continue going once I've already resized it. And this is how it's going to look like.
Command space and type. Command space and type.
And then I want all of this to be nested again, and I want it to fade out at the very end. Like so.
Slide search by hitting Command space and type in Safari. Then go into Netflix.com. Come up to...
Also in the beginning, I want to actually show that I've installed the Netflix app so that it reaffirms the click for someone who's actually looking for a fast tutorial. So I'll probably film that with my phone later and just showcase the Netflix app on my actual dock on my laptop. Right now, I don't have that footage, so I'm just leaving it empty and working on the rest of the video. Sometimes Premiere gets laggy, so I'm just going to quit it. Obviously, save it before you do that. And normally it quits pretty fast. And when it's laggy, it quits pretty slow. So right now it quit very slow and it just confirms that it was laggy. I'll then go into my miscellaneous folder and open the latest project. Schwomp. All right, everything seems to be intact. Let's continue. I think the playback is laggy because of the background, so I'm just going to disable it. And yes, that was the culprit. Wait, some of these do not have a multiband compressor. I must have accidentally removed it. So I'm just going to add the multiband compressor back in to each of these clips, making sure that it doesn't have, yeah, this one has it already. And this one has it. And this one also has it, which is weird. So I must have removed it accidentally. Right now, I'm just watching through the video again and seeing if I can add or tweak anything else. I want to add a crying meme or something right here. I believe I also have it. Cry. Yes, I do have it. Sometimes I just remember what I did in previous videos, and so I can just grab some things from there and add it to my new sequence instead of having to re-download them again by going to Google and searching for them again like the Apple keyboard. So this is the final position I want this to end in, and I'm going to hide it. I hope I have an Illuminati sound effect, and if I don't, it's not a problem. I'm going to search for a cartoon sound effect. Maybe cartoon accent would fit the Netflix app disappearing. It disappears somewhere right here. Let's see if the sound effect is good.
You can see it disappeared.
I'm decreasing the level to something like -10.
It'll be gone. As you can see, it disappeared. Oh, and there's
still a little too loud. I removed the keyframe so that no matter if my playhead is here or here, it still changes the level across the whole clip instead of only this part. And then there was another keyframe here, which means it would have gradually increased volume up to that keyframe. Let's say -15.
Be gone. As you can see, it disappeared. Oh, and there's one final thing that I forgot to mention. Psych.
So now I'm just going to plop a music track down here. Probably this one, good for intro. That's right. Bloop. And it's the perfect length for this video. I usually reserve my A1 and A2 tracks for dialogue, A3, 4, and 5 for sound effects, and A6 for audio. But in this case, there's not really that many sound effects or audio tracks that I need to use. So I'm just going to keep it on A3 and then go into my audio track mixer, which lets me add effects and change volume across the whole track. And I'm going to lower the volume of the third track to -24. To -23. Also, I'm going to add a parametric equalizer, if I can find it here. Filter and EQ, parametric equalizer. And then I saw someone actually decrease the highs of the song because that's where most of the human voice is. And so it makes it easier to hear the voiceover. I have no idea how it will sound like, so I'm just going to check and see if it sounds good or bad.
In order to download the Netflix app on your Mac, open up your Spotlight search by hitting Command Space and type in Safari, then go into netflix.com. Come up to File and choose Add to Dock. Here you'll be able to name your web. In order to download the Netflix...
Oh, it's a little bit more muffled, huh? Why does it drop down like this? Hello, sir, please stay in place. I'm going to move this to another track and set the whole track to -17 and then just not touch the track A3. And I'm going to add a new parametric equalizer because I'm not sure what is happening and why everything keeps resetting. This audio sounds a little different, and why does it have 2 presets? So I think when I was copying effects across clips, it also copied everything else from those clips. So now everything is duplicated. And that's why I'm removing audio effects from all of the audio and then re-adding my voiceover preset for mono, which should add only 1 instance of the preset to each of the clips. I feel like the music is getting a little too loud here, so I may just add a few keyframes around this point and here and just drag it down by something like 2 decibels. Make the transition a little smoother, and then we can ramp it back up again, like so. Maybe I'll nudge the audio down to -20 again, because I think it's a little too loud here at the end as well. Now, all I need is this very beginning. And it's now the next day. So what I'm going to do is try to fill this part by, again, reinstalling the Netflix app by going to Safari, netflix.com, then File, Add to Dock. Boom. Perfect. And then I need an icon for that. I'll just pick this one, which is similar to the one I used in the video, I think. And I'm just doing the same thing that I did in the tutorial, basically. Kill all dock always works to reset the dock and its icons, and you can see that the Netflix app is now updated. So I'm going to close a few of these apps that I don't really need. Pages, I think I'm leaving Pages, to make the dock look nice and clean. I don't really like the day one icon, so that's why I'm removing it. I'm also putting the dock on the bottom because that's how most people use their Mac. And here's the Netflix app. So what I want now is to record my screen, actually turn off dock hiding. So now I'm just going to open the Netflix app and then show that in the video. And that's it. Whoop. Let's get you back to the left. And let's go back to Premiere. I'm not going to uninstall the Netflix app just yet because I want to make sure that I got everything right in the recording. Okay, we're going to zoom in a lot so that my files are not visible. And then we're probably going to track the mouse cursor, for which I'm going to add these guides over here and then add both these keyframes, move a few frames down, and then move the mouse to the center, move a few more frames down, and then move this again. I'm moving by 3 frames because I think that should be enough. And I also want to zoom in even more.
Netflix app on your Mac, open up.
Perfect. Let's see how that looks like. I don't think it will look super good, but let's see. Disable guides.
In order to download the...
Ooh, very choppy. Let's set that to auto Bezier. Maybe that makes it a little smoother.
In order to download the Netflix app on your... There's a
lot of movement here at the end, which I don't think we need. So maybe this is better.
In order to download the
Yes, much better.
In order to download the Netflix app on your Mac.
Nice, I think that's nice.
In order to download the Netflix app on...
I'm going to add a mouse click sound effect as well. Let's add mine because this is my recording basically. Boop.
In order to download the
Barely audible. So I'm going to increase the level by 10 so it's louder.
In order to download the Netflix app on...
Also, I want to stop music when I say it looks horrible.
It acts just like any other app. But there is one problem, and that's the icon.
There we go.
It looks horrible. To change that, you can right-click, go to Options, and choose...
Now the ending seems a lot better because the music ends naturally and I don't have to fade it out. That's just a lucky coincidence. Since I'm recording this video with ScreenFlow, I think it screws up with my audio delay in my headphones, so I can't really make out if this sound effect is in the right spot or not. Only way for me to tell is by looking at the actual video footage, so I'll probably just go over this whole sequence again and fix any audio issues if there are any when I stop the recording. Or maybe I won't. It's a pretty simple tutorial, so probably no one cares about most of the things that I've done here and all the zoom-ins and screen overlays. And yeah, I think it's now finished. I'm going to hit O on my keyboard to set an out point here and then Command M to export. For video, I'm going to match the source of the sequence, and for effects, I'm going to choose loudness normalization, then this, or I can just choose YouTube audio right here, which is a preset that I have that sets the loudness standard to be this, then the target loudness units full scale to be -14, tolerance 1, and max true peak to -1, which is basically the audio settings that YouTube likes best. So let's see if everything's good. In the source here, you can see the source, which means your actual sequence, what its settings are. Mine is 60 FPS and 1440p, and the output, or what you're going to get when you export, is also 60 FPS and 1440p. Very nice. Let's go to more. Make sure maximum render quality is selected, and I'm going to choose 2 paths because this is a pretty short video. And export. Oh, by the way, if you're curious about how I'm making this video, this is the current setup that I'm using. It's basically a chair over here that I have my phone as a microphone, and I'm recording inside the Voice Memos app, and then I'm doing stuff on the MacBook. Also, this screen painting thing that I'm using is an app called ScreenBrush. I just randomly installed it. It's pretty useful, and the color changes as you paint. Very nice. So here, as I was rewatching it, I accidentally left the screen overlay for too long right here, so you can see it in the background, and I actually forgot to enable the background so that it's visible. I sometimes do this by accident, but nevertheless, I'm rewatching it again, seeing if I notice any more mistakes. So now that everything is for sure finished, I'm deleting the old one and I'm going to re-export this one. I accidentally closed the project file. I also forgot to create a sequences bin because I do that with every single Premiere project that I work on. And then I put all the sequences inside of the sequences folder. Since I make 5 videos at the same time, the sequences folder makes it easy for me to find the sequence that I want the next time that I come into this project, like a month or half a year later. And then I'm going to move everything inside of the B-roll of the Netflix app, which I will do also on my Mac, not only inside of Premiere. I'm naming this done because the Netflix app, well, it's done. And also on my Mac, I will create a new folder called unfinished 499 Netflix app 2, because this is the second iteration of this tutorial, because there was a macOS update that lets you do this with file add to dock. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll create a folder here called B-roll and move all the B-roll that I used inside of it. So this, and this, I think. Yes, these are all random files. And then I will have a folder called upload this, where I will put the finished export, and then one more folder called audio. But in this case, I recorded audio with the screen share, so I would not have this folder. And one final one will be called thumbnail, which will house the Photoshop file, which has the thumbnail. So now I'm going to link everything back within Premiere, set an out point again. I'm also emptying the trash. And meanwhile, I think I'm going to start working on the thumbnail for this video. So I'm choosing 720p as the size, of course. And I'm going to take inspiration from the YouTube video that I've made right here, how to download the YouTube app on Mac, because it's essentially the same. Unfortunately, I don't currently have this thumbnail on my Mac. I think it's inside of my hard drive, which is not very good since I can't get it right now. So I'm just going to copy the link of this video, then go to YouTube thumbnail downloader, and just yoink my own thumbnail, then import it in. And essentially, I'm just going to replace this icon to a Netflix icon instead of the YouTube icon. Or maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe I should just remake the thumbnail altogether. We'll see what I end up doing. So the position on screen is bottom. And I also want to go to dock settings and turn on magnification, so that it makes it bigger. Then I'm going to put my mouse over here, actually set my computer to dark mode probably, because I think it looks a little better. And then Command-Shift-4, space, and then click once to screenshot the dock. There we have the screenshot. Import it into Photoshop and make it bigger. So the previous one was just the dock. I removed everything from my dock except from these apps. But here I will not do that. I'm going to copy and paste this and then make it bigger, so it's for sure clear that it's Netflix. Then I'm going to search for mouse cursor. Yes, sir. And I have them in SVG, so essentially I can make them as big or small as I want. So I'll make it like this and then add a shadow. Looks pretty good. And now for the background. Probably going to go into Magma Balls and pick a background that I just used for my own desktop background, which is this one. And then just put it on the bottom. Whoop. I'm not sure if this wallpaper works with this thumbnail, so I'm probably just going to use this one that I used for the YouTube video, which is the Space 3 wallpaper. Whoop-pow. Good. I don't like this black line at the bottom of the dock, so I'm just going to mask that out as well with a soft brush. There we go. And finally, I want the anime lines that I had here. Maybe I still have them on the MacBook. Anime lines. Let's go. Video screenshot. Oh, I think it's Command S. Yes, that's how you take a screenshot inside of the Ina media player. Screen looks the best. We're also going to blur them a little bit. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, maybe like so. And I want them to be in the dead center of the Netflix app. Looks pretty good to me. Maybe let's increase the blur just a little bit. Yep, that's the thumbnail. I'm going to call it T1, stands for thumbnail 1, because I often have a few versions, not just one. And then I'm going to export it as JPEG, which is good, and call it the Netflix app. Now the video is exported, so I can just quit Premiere. And I also have the thumbnail, which will go inside of my folder, inside of the thumbnail place, and then the actual thumbnail, and the video that I exported will go into the upload this folder. I can delete the enemy lines because I don't need them, screenshot and the previous thumbnail, and there we go. This is the thumbnail and this is the video. So that concludes this Premiere Pro tutorial. Also, you probably saw that I have a bunch of presets that I use, so I'm going to explain what each of them do, and if you want, you can replicate them yourself. Or if you're too lazy to replicate them, I've put them all inside of my Premiere Pro presets pack, which has all of these beautiful presets, as well as the background that I added before, 2 arrows that I animated with Manim. It's a Python library, basically. Then the RGB overlay that I used, and my customizable templates sequence, which I'm not sure if it will work for you because, well, you may not have the fonts that I have or some assets inside of it, but I hope it works. So the presets. So to show off the presets, I've prepared a few assets, an image with the background and an image without the background. So I'll just cover the more interesting presets. The first one is anomaly camera shake, which just basically shakes the image. It's pretty easy to do, and essentially there's a transform effect with the position slightly changing with each new frame. Some of these presets have YouTuber names in front of them because that's where I drew inspiration from for creating these presets. The next one is called Apple Color, and it's basically for text. I used this text for lessons of my YouTube video course and nowhere else really, but I'm still leaving these presets here because, well, they're pretty cool. So it's just text colored in different Apple colors. You can obviously replace this text to be anything that you want. Oh, and also I added an empty text layer by just choosing the text tool and clicking somewhere on the screen so that it adds a blank layer and that I can actually add the presets to this graphic thing on my timeline. Next, we have the basic 3D effect, which is useful for full frame recordings or screenshots since it makes it look like there's a camera zooming into the screen or zooming out of the screen. To set this one up, it's just a basic 3D effect with the swivel and tilt keyframes. The next preset is a movement preset, which essentially just slightly moves whatever's on the screen. Again, Benny Productions is a YouTube channel that inspired me to create this preset. Next one is called Zoom Out with Blur, so it's useful for placing something on the screen. If we examine it closely, it starts off with a slight blur and then the image becomes a little smaller as it comes into frame. So basically the blur disappears. Again, it's pretty simple. There's just a Gaussian blur that's going from 10 to 0. And then there's the transform effect with the scale attribute keyframed from 107 to 100. The next one is a bounce, and I'm going to add it to this image. So it makes it bounce. Next one is a smooth bounce, so it makes it bounce, but a little smoother. Very nice. So to make the bounce effect, all you need is a transform effect, and essentially you're going to create a bunch of bouncing keyframes. This one goes down, and then it suddenly goes up. Then it goes down again and up. And you want this sharp spike in the velocity. So see how I've set it up? The position starts off 720, then goes down to 666, then up to 720, then down to 666, then up to 720. So it just repeats itself. The hardest part is setting up these spikes so the actual bounce looks pretty natural and bouncy. This one is deep fried, so it's just like a meme. It makes everything, well, deep fried. To set it up, you'll want 2 unsharp mask effects, one set to 500 and the radius to 8, and the other one set to these amounts. This, of course, can be tweaked depending on the look that you prefer. And also a Lumetri color that under creative has this shadow and tint. So basically everything is set to red and it gives it this deep fried look. I like the look of it. It looks so smooth now. The ear ape preset basically makes your audio super distorted. Gaussian blur eye-shaped is useful for screenshots. So if I take a screenshot and then import it, and I want to slightly blur the edges so that the viewer focuses in the center, I'm going to apply the eye-shaped Gaussian blur and decrease the blurriness a little bit, then play around with the mask so it's a little inside and the feather is a lot bigger. You'll see that now the edges of the screen have a little blur and the center is in focus. Handheld movement is also pretty simple, useful for screenshots or screen recordings when you want to add a little bit of movement when nothing else is happening. Icon pop-up is a nice little pop-up that works with smaller images, so something like this. I've also nested this clip so that its size becomes 100 instead of 20 something, so that this preset works as intended, and this is how it looks like. Of course, it looks better with an icon rather than this image. And again, it's essentially just a transform preset with 3 keyframes going from scale 70 to scale 120 to 100. So basically it starts off pretty small, then it gets larger than it should, and then it comes back to its actual size. And the curves on the velocity look like this. Skip, skip, skip. Skip moving edges is pretty cool. It adds these moving edges to the image. It has this interesting shadowy aesthetic that I sometimes use for, well, images or GIFs. It's just a rough and edges effect, and the fractal influence, the offset and evolution are all keyframed. So as it plays, it actually changes how the corners look like. The next preset uses the same effect, but it just rounds the corners of the image and nothing is keyframed. You can adjust the border to round them more or less. The S-curve preset will just give you a nice contrasty look on your footage, so it's not going to look on this animated character, but it looks pretty good on real life footage. And there's another S-curve. I'm not sure how they're different. Transform down will just add a nice blurry animation that just moves the object off screen. Transform up with a bounce. I like this one. It looks like this. Womp. And then transform up with a smoother bounce. Womp. These are all essentially the same and they're done with the transform preset. And this is how the keyframes are laid out. So first we keyframe the position from -1000 something. So it basically comes from the bottom of the screen into the middle of the screen. And of course we add a nice curve to this movement. And then you want to animate the anchor point so that it starts off at the bottom, then moves up too much, then comes down, then up again, and then down again. And basically you want all of these to be Bezier, so you want to see these mountains in the velocity. Of course, you can achieve that by playing around with these handles. This one also took me quite a little bit of time to do because I kept messing up these velocity values. So just mess around with the anchor point until your bounce animation looks pretty decent. And I made 2 of them because I couldn't really decide which one looks better. The white outline adds a white outline on the edges of the image. It's essentially just 4 drop shadows, each set to a different direction. So this one is 90 degrees, which adds a white shadow over here. This one's 180 degrees, 270, and 0 degrees. The distance of the shadow is 3, the color is white, and the opacity is 100. Wapow. This one yeets the image in from the right side, so like so. And this one yeets the image out to the left side. So once it finishes, it just goes away. These presets are also just transform presets with the position, scale, rotation, and opacity keyframed. So here it comes from the right, and as it comes in, the opacity changes from 0 to 100, the rotation changes from -1 to 0, and the scale changes from 95 to 100, as well as the position resets to the center. So it's pretty simple once you set it up. And so these are the main presets that I use for pretty much every single video that I make. Of course, I don't use all the presets, but I use ones for one type of video and others for other types of videos. They're basically aimed to hold attention better by adding some sort of movement or help showcase images, GIFs, or something else that pops up on the screen. And there are also a few ones for text. So these are the presets. If you don't want to make them yourself, I've neatly packaged them all into my Premiere Pro presets pack, where I also included the animated background that I used for this image, so these moving dots over here.
Doc. Here you'll be able to name your web app.
But here's what's inside the assets. This is the first arrow that you can use as an overlay, and this is the second arrow, which essentially is just inverted. Then there's the RGB monitor overlay that I used for the zoom-ins, which adds this sort of pixelated thing on top of the footage so that it looks like you're actually zoomed into a real monitor, and some more cool things. So that concludes this Premiere Pro tutorial. Oh, and there's one more thing that I forgot to mention. Psych.